Ants have been waging war for over 100 million years, and in that time, they've perfected raiding tactics that would make military strategists jealous. Some species mobilize columns of millions that move through forests like living tidal waves, building bridges out of their own bodies to cross obstacles and dismantling everything in their path. Others have evolved venom so potent they can take down prey 50 times their size through coordinated mass attacks. And some wage territorial wars where billions clash along borders that stretch for kilometers, using chemical warfare to exterminate rival colonies. These aren't random skirmishes or opportunistic hunts. These are systematic military operations refined over millions of years of evolution. And the coordination behind them is what makes ant raids so effective. No generals giving orders, no battle plans drawn up in advance, just millions of individuals following simple chemical rules that create devastatingly complex tactics. So let's break down how ant raids actually work, from the species that have turned raiding into an art form to the strategies that make some ant colonies the most efficient killers in the insect world. We're starting with army ants, also called driver ants in Africa, though the principle remains the same across both groups. These are the apex raiders of the insect world, and what makes them different from other ants isn't just their size, though colonies can reach 20 million individuals. It's that they've evolved a completely nomadic lifestyle. Most ants build a nest and stay there for years, but army ants are always moving, always hunting, because their colony is so large that staying in one place would strip the area of food within days. They've evolved a lifestyle built around constant migration and constant raiding, alternating between two distinct phases: a stationary phase where the queen lays eggs and the colony rests in a temporary bivouac, and a nomadic phase where the colony hunts every single day for weeks until the brood matures and the cycle repeats. This isn't opportunistic hunting, where they stumble across prey by chance. This is systematic extermination of every food source within reach. Here's how a raid begins with just a handful of scouts leaving the bivouac, spreading out into the surrounding area to search for prey. These scouts aren't looking for anything specific. They're searching for whatever can't move fast enough to escape, whether that's a termite colony, a spider nest, another ant colony, or any creature unfortunate enough to be in their path. When a scout finds something worth attacking, she doesn't engage immediately, but instead lays down a pheromone trail as she returns to the bivouac, creating a chemical message where the strength of the pheromone indicates the quality of the find. A weak trail signals minimal food not worth the effort, while a strong trail indicates significant prey that's worth mobilizing the entire swarm to attack. When that signal reaches the bivouac, the raid begins as workers start following the trail in increasing numbers. First hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands as the pheromone trail gets reinforced with every ant that follows it. This creates a positive feedback loop where more ants means more pheromone, which attracts even more ants, and within an hour, you can have over 1 million ants moving in formation toward the target, with no one giving orders and no general coordinating the attack. The result is a column of ants that can stretch for 100 meters, moving through the forest like a living river. And if you've ever seen footage of this phenomenon, you know it's anything but subtle, since the sound alone, a rustling, crackling noise as millions of legs and mandibles move through leaf litter, is enough to make animals flee. But here's where it gets interesting. The terrain doesn't matter, because army ants encounter obstacles constantly, and they've evolved a solution that's both simple and horrifying. They build bridges out of their own bodies, with workers linking together mandibles to legs to form a living chain across the gap, while the ants at the bottom get compressed under the weight of thousands of ants walking over them. Some get injured in the process, some die under the pressure, but none of that matters because the bridge holds long enough for the column to cross. Once enough ants have passed to the other side, the bridge disassembles itself, and the workers who formed it rejoin the march as if nothing happened. There's no plan guiding this, No architect designing the structure, just local rules, where if there's a gap and you're near the edge, you link up with nearby workers, and if enough ants have crossed, you detach and follow the group. The system organizes itself through these simple rules, and it works so efficiently that army ants can cross terrain that would stop other species entirely. Now you're probably wondering how they carry all that back. You know, I'm talking about the dismantled body parts of the insects that fell victim to the ants. We're talking about tons of biomass, literal tons, captured, dismembered, and transported. The answer is the same coordination system. Workers that encountered prey cut it into manageable pieces, carry those pieces back along the pheromone trail. The trail leads to the bivouac, the temporary nest, and it exists because army ants have no permanent home. When the nomadic phase ends and the colony switches to stationary phase, they form the bivouac. When it's time to move again, they disassemble and march, every ant carrying brood, the queen walking in the center of a protective column. It's a mobile fortress, and it's been working for 50 million years. But army ants aren't the only ants that raid. They're just the most extreme. There is another ant species that raids with a completely different strategy. We are talking about fire ants. In contrast to army ants, they're not nomadic. They build permanent nests. And when fire ants raid, they do something army ants don't. They weaponize venom. You've probably heard of fire ants, maybe even been stung by them. That burning sensation you feel, that's not just pain. That's alkaloid venom. And fire ants have evolved to deliver it in massive coordinated doses. Here's how a fire ant raid works. A threat enters their territory. Could be an insect, or even your own foot. The workers nearest to the threat release alarm pheromones. That chemical signal spreads, and within seconds, hundreds of fire ants converge on the location. But they don't just bite. They latch on. Their mandibles lock into the target. And once they're attached, they sting. The stinger curves under their body and injects venom into the victim. 1 sting is painful, 10 stings is worse, and 100 stings is lethal for most insects. And fire ants don't sting once and leave. They sting repeatedly, pumping venom until their supply runs out or the target is dead. And because they're latched on, you can't shake them off. Brushing at them doesn't work. They hold tight and keep stinging. And if you're an insect caught in the middle of a fire ant swarm, you're not escaping. The venom accumulates, and your nervous system shuts down. The ants carry your body back to the nest, dismember it, and feed it to the larvae. It's brutal. And it works because fire ants have optimized for a different niche than army ants. They're not exterminating entire regions. They're defending territory and opportunistically hunting anything that gets too close. So we've covered 2 strategies: army ants with their nomadic lifestyle, massive scale, and living infrastructure that allows them to exterminate everything in their path, and fire ants with their stationary nests, venom-based attacks, and mass-coordinated stinging that makes them efficient territorial defenders. But there are hundreds of other ant species that raid, each with their own variations refined over millions of years of evolutionary pressure to suit their specific environments and prey. But when you compare the sheer scale and efficiency, army ants remain unmatched because they hunt as a collective organism where 20 million individuals act as one. And when they are on the move, everything in their path either runs or dies. So that's how ant raids actually work. Different species with different strategies, but all built on the same core principle of coordination without a coordinator, where millions of individuals follow simple chemical rules that create complex and devastating tactics. When ants raid, they don't hunt individuals, but strip entire areas clean before moving on. And it's not malicious or cruel, just efficient. The result of evolution optimizing these systems over millions of years into some of nature's most effective killing machines. And if you're wondering how millions of ants can coordinate these raids without anyone giving orders, how they know when to attack and where to go, that comes down to the colony system itself. If you want to understand the system that makes these raids possible, check out the last video where I broke down how ant colonies actually work. Because understanding the colony is the key to understanding why ant raids are so devastatingly effective.